Welcome back to Afria, Anime Review Episode number 9. This is reviewing the 17th episode of the anime Reunion, which is also the 4th episode of Season 2. This one adapts from it covers pretty much mostly the rest of Chapter 1, and goes through about the first 18 pages of Chapter number 2 of the book. Though there is a section of the episode that I'm not sure where the heck this is from. I don't think it's from Book 6. I don't know, because I wasn't rereading Book 6. It may have been Book 6, I don't know. Now, the way this thing adapts, the sequences they adapt in this episode are actually out of order from the book. Now, first you start with Tio. This actually happens, in between some stuff, the way presented in the book. Yes, they adapt Tio stuff first, where she is riding back at the village, she crashes down, and of course, Corey basically goes to look after her. They do, in fact, cut a character completely out of the episode. A character named Alice, who developed a liking to Miyu as like a little sister. Yeah, they cut her scene completely out of the episode. My guess is they cut the character because there's no dialogue for her. There's not much description for her. Just that she's a daughter of somebody. And there's not much to the character at all in the book. That's probably the reason why Astrid probably had her cut from the episode, because there's not much of the character itself. For what I can tell, the scene itself really doesn't affect anything at all. It's just like she's there as a minor background character. Who knows? They might fill it in for a director's cut of this one, possibly. This is about her being stuff with poison. Yeah, they cut like a small chunk of this out. Not much per se. They probably just want to keep the thing going, where you have Tao in bed with Ko on one side and Mau on the other, and of course she basically tells exactly what happened. Of course, gives Haijima's message, and of course see him later. Next time a sequence actually comes from the start of Chapter 2. Where you see Hajime on top of a submarine, and you're thinking, what the heck happened here? Was the scene cut? Well, what they did is they have him rest on the thing, and simply put, the sequence that happened here is actually happened before this, but they have it here as a flashback, which is good they kept this in. From what I can tell, they only cut one small thing from this scene. They cut actually a couple things here. They were inside the structure that was middle of the volcano. They go in, they go back in a circle, they read a line, which is from a guy named Nazar. There's actually a mention of the character Oscar, a character that Hajime and Yo met in Book 1. Yes, I'm not really sure why they cut that for. I get why cut the character Alice, not much of the character herself, but cutting Oscar, but that's a tiny bit of a conversation. So, this is about Oscar's, about the diary stuff. That's basically minor stuff, that does not really affect the episode at all. No, not really. And then, of course, Yo walks up to the message, opens up, and takes up the thing they're supposed to get. And to get out, they have to use like a ship. The way Hajime describes it, it's almost like he kept the thing as a surprise. In the book, the girls didn't know about this particular thing, the submarine. And also they cut the thing out of basically Hajime asking Yo to make a barrier. They cut that out probably because it wasn't necessary, because Yo's probably going to do it anyways. So it was probably implied he probably asked her off screen. Keeping this out of the anime probably was a good idea, because it'd be kind of like, hey, you make a barrier, and there's a barrier. Okay, this barrier, walk across the thing. I gotta hand it to the animators for the submarine. It looks very similar to the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yes, I would say the inspiration for the coloring is from, I'd probably say from the Disney version of the thing. I'm not from what I can tell, the submarine itself does not get a good description in the book per se. It's just, Hajime's got a submarine now, and he developed it at some point. And I appreciate that the anime basically made it like a mini sub by the coloring of the Disney version from the 50s. And heck, it looks very similar to it. I gotta say, the animation for it actually looks pretty good. And after they get on board, and of course we have it where Yo is like, she's actually getting very ill. Looked like she's Haijime's blood, but Hajime needs to drive. So she volunteers to basically have her blood drinking, which they do mention earlier, so they give an explanation for that. And then, of course, they kind of a minor change in wording of dialogue here, where you have Yo on top of Hajime, where basically she says, "Why on top?" Because there's a Hajime there, and then she proceeds to get undressed. Yep. And it's mentioned in the book that these two had sex. I'm not kidding about that. These two had sex off screen. If that's the case, why is Hajime still wearing his pants? Who the heck knows? And apparently she was actually woken up by this. There's a hilarious thing in the episode where apparently she was sleeping face up, which, by the way, from what I've read in the health book, that's not very healthy to do, by the way. There's something some people do it, I don't do it. Where she sleeps with a big bag of ice on her forehead, which I found to be so hilarious. Because it's just a funny thing, because she's a bunny, she's a rabbit man, so of course she probably would do that. And then she's like, well, you two are having a good time, which that line is from the book, so that's something that did not change from book to anime. And then they're attacked by dragons. Yes, Meiyu's people. And it's a very brief fight, and you're probably thinking, was there a bit of extension in the book? Kind of, yes. They trimmed this down tremendously. And then Miyu shows up completely out of nowhere. She's falling from the sky. And Hydra's like, oh no, it's Miyu. And of course, he flies up, and of course, Yo basically slows her down so Hydra can catch her. Now, there's actually a bit of a scene here cut. Probably due to time, basically, him being Q. Well, the Q's big part basically was there, but a lot of stuff happened afterwards, the in-between stuff. That was probably cut due to time. It didn't really affect the scene at all. Not really, no. And then they arrive at the actual thing itself. There's a mention here about the ruins. The sunken ruins of... whatchamacallit here? The second ruins of Masan, that you mentioned earlier than the actual way the anime presents it. Because in the book, they actually mention this when they arrive at Meiyu's hometown. In the anime, they mention this when Hydra was the volcano. I like the fact they did that. It probably was better in the course of this, basically to tease why they're there, because of the whole thing of this labyrinth that's there. And then when he arrived, Hydra just shows off his ID, and that's that. And in the book, basically, everyone was it was, according to people, they were shocked the fact that he was, the captain he's a Golden Ring adventurer. Here, he just basically shows the ID, and he's like, I'm sure you had tons of questions for me, but I'd like to meet you home. And, well, it's a bit short of a scene. In the book, it's slightly longer. And, like with the other scene, trimmed down for time. So they have him finally reunite with Miyu's mom, Risima. Yes, very beautiful woman. Striking him. Miyu looks exactly like her, because mother and daughter. And, I should point out, though, in the book, Miyu refers to Hajime as Daddy. In the anime, she calls him Papa. By the way, the English dub actually keeps this in, by the way. And refers to her mom as Mama. Which, in the book, it's Mommy. It's a minor wording change. I guess the reason why the Funimation kept that portion in for Miyu, because that's what she said in the anime, so I'm not going to criticize Funimation for keeping that in, even though that's a change from the actual book itself. That's not the fault of Funimation, that's the fault of the original studio, who was, well, you could say it is a fault of Funimation for when it was translated, possibly yes, but it was probably due to the fault of the guy who actually wrote the script for this episode to have that changed from the book. Of course, I'm reading the English translation of the book, not the original Japanese version. I, of course, never read the Japanese version because I don't speak or read Japanese. I'll write Japanese, mind you. So, and of course, Miyu basically is very happy. Now her mom basically has got a damaged leg. They do cut the scene a little bit here, not by much. We do see three people here who basically say they actually cut this line from the anime, where they're part of the Resma Miyu protection group, which is basically a fan club for these two beautiful, for this beautiful mom and adorable little girl. And I mentioned about the emergency meeting thing. That is from the book, so that's not a change. That's not something that. Well, they do kind of the name of the group. They just say they have to do emergency meeting because they just basically a fanboy group. And yes, this group that exists in the book. So they do have the expression off screen of basically of Hydra basically met Miyu. And of course, there's a little bit of dialogue cut here, maybe a couple lines per se, when Corey is healing up Rizuma's leg. And of course, they mentioned that she actually got this leg injured when she was trying to save Miyu from being kidnapped. She tried to, but she failed. And of course, basically, Hajime says she's going to stay in an inn, despite the fact that she offers her home to Hajime. This is actually a joke in the book, which I would not be surprised they included next week's episode where he's like, oh, Mommy and Daddy can sleep together. And the girls get so jealous. The other three girls get so jealous of that. The four girls get so jealous of that, which I found to be so hilarious in the book. I would not be surprised if they actually put that in the next week's episode. I would not be surprised about that. Because Hydra was like, man, they're being trapped here. And of course, that portion ends. And then we cut to the capital. Yes, we cut to the capital. Which we have Suna reunite with Anko, her teacher. Yep. This is actually something I tried to find in the book. I could not find exactly where the heck this happened in chapter 2. It may have happened in chapter 1, but I didn't see it. So, she basically is looking for Princess Luna. Not there. And then she runs with the teacher, and of course they chat a bit. They mentioned stuff that happened toward the end of the previous season that was that from book 3, which the scene finds to be so hilarious, where she's actually remembering when Hajime kissed her, which she does not bring up in the anime, but it's just so funny, the fact that she brings this up, which I find to be so hilarious. Yep, and of course she does mention that Hajime has been branded the heretic, officially, of course, branded the heretic. And, of course, Suzuna is not very happy with this. And she also refers to Anko as Ai-chan. And, of course, then she reveals that Ai-chan's goal. Well, off-screen, mind you, and that's the episode. I gotta say, really good. Interesting, though, they adapted the first several scenes out of order, per se. It's like, in the book, basically stuff they adapted for the episode is that the volcano stuff happened first, then the Geo stuff, then the submarine, then the stuff basically at sea. That's the order they had in the book where they adapted here. In the anime, it's Tio, then you see submarine in the water, then you have the flashback, then you have the stuff happen afterwards. I don't mind that particular order per se, as long as these events happen the way they did in the book. It's not really a big issue with me. Yes, I don't mind the fact they trimmed down the whole scene. They trimmed down the conversation. But still good episode. And also, one thing I should point out, though, there's not much for action this one. Oh, I almost forgot to mention when they do the submarine thing. They actually do cut a portion of the on their way before they meet up with Miyu's people. And the book, get this. They fought a freaking Kraken. Yes, a Kraken. Which, that would be interesting to see, but they cut it from the anime. That'd probably be something they may adapt later, because that would have been hilarious to see in this anime. But they kept it the sharks. Yes, they fought in the book too. And while I was watching this scene, I'm like, wow, these sharks actually look really good in this animation. I'm like, why couldn't you have this in season 1 for the monsters of the series? I mean, I should point out, Tio actually got an update from season 1. Because in season 1, she didn't have those red things under... Like, if you watch the season, she has this sort of red stuff under her eyes in her dragon form. She didn't have that in season 1. They added that in season 2, and the sharks had that too, which I thought that was interesting. I didn't mind that change at all. I thought that was really cool. And the sharks actually really... Despite the fact that it actually is really short, and then, of course, they fire freaking torpedoes at the damn thing. And I didn't... Oh, crap, we're out of ammo. After 4 torpedoes? What, you only armed this thing with 4 torpedoes? Seriously. And it's something, though, that apparently that the submarine has got its own oxygen, and it's got its electronic control system. But basically, what this thing is a mini sub, though it's not small. I've been in the mini sub. The one basically they have here is basically kind of like half the size of the Nautilus from the 2000 Lake of the Sea movie. You don't see much of the submarine on the inside. The only rooms you see is the bridge and a room that Shia sleeps in. Of course, I do appreciate they actually this little lookout thing in the actual episode, which I found to be so cool. And of course, Mew's people just lie on the ground unconscious. Mew doesn't say anything about it, surprisingly. The fact their adoptive father beat the crap out of their own people. Probably because they're idiots. And they're basically acting on wrong information. Yep. But the submarine stuff was really good. In the case of the way the animation looked for the thing, it looked mostly finished. I'd say that they probably wanted to do a little bit more with it, maybe look a little more dark of a color, but they probably had to rush that pretty quickly. But the interior looked really good. I at least got a hand to that. The interior looked fantastic. It may not be like, at least the interior looked finished from the way you look at the control room of the actual submarine. What you can think of as the bridge. That looked mostly complete. And even if you could say Hydra made this at some point per se, and they do have it how you get out of the volcano, is that he rides the lava and he goes to this underground trench that leads to the ocean, which is near an underground volcano. That's how he gets out, which is interesting to like that because he thought the thing was actually erupting and would go up in the air like Tia went. They mentioned that in the actual book itself, in the anime itself. They do actually don't. They actually cut completely out of the episode all dimensions of Freed. Yes, there's 7 dimensions of Freed in the actual flashback in the volcano. They completely cut that out, where they mentioned it was a shortcut. They probably cut it because Heights probably didn't like the guy at all because he fired him, and they probably didn't want to deal with the character at all because he didn't physically appear in the actual stuff they adapted, so there probably was need to mention him at all. No, not really. That's my personal guess anyways. Okay, so that's going to be pretty much it for this particular review. And you might be thinking, wow, Nick, you basically thoroughly detailed this whole episode. Mostly, yes. Though it is a fresh new episode that aired just yesterday. Is there anything major I didn't like about this episode? Well, I think that the only thing I didn't like, though, is that the submarine could look like he was a little bit more work. But it might return a little bit later on. Possibly, yes. And I'm wondering what the labyrinth's going to look like for this next one. I'm very curious about that. Oh, they do mention Anko actually fought against Hydrabrand and the Heretic because he dared disobey the church. Because he didn't want to follow their orders. I'm like, you probably, of course, they do mention he saved the whole town, which he did that toward the end of season 1, which I believe is from book 4, if I'm not mistaken, from the start of book 4. And for some reason, they decided to say, oh yeah, because he did disobey the church, he's branded heretic. Last time I checked, we brand someone heretic, they gotta do a lot more than just simply not follow the orders. They have to actually do something really, really bad. They branded a heretic. I mean, he doesn't want to follow the orders, but whatever. Yep. So yeah, that is definitely going to be it for this particular video. Stay tuned for the next video, which is going to be, which I do have time to do tonight because I'm not going to work tomorrow. It's my day off, okay? Next one is going to be the case study of Vanitas. Well, actually, first I might do Shaman King. And then the case study of Vanitas, okay? Next video. Bye.